Chapter 4 Sexual Avoidance. There are two broad categories of sexual avoidance: innate or essential asexuality and acquired anxious. Description: innate or essential sexual avoidance asexuality. Innate or essential sexual avoidance suffer from a sexual hypoactivity disorder, a kind of sexual alexithymia where the individual experiences diminished or absent sexual urges and believes that that state of affairs is normal, welcome, desirable, and acceptable. The cry is, I don't feel sexual. I don't want to feel sexual. I just can't have sex. I won't have sex. Who needs sex? Sex is not for me. Some asexual men and women complain only of a lack of desire, while others also complain of a lack of genital sensation. Some once felt sexual but lost that feeling later in life. Others claim that they had nothing to lose because they never had strong sexual feelings in the first place. And some retain the capacity for romance, and others are as personally unromantic as they are sexually unarousable. A case example: one of my asexual patients half-jokingly said that he was perfectly happy being in love with his truck. He cracked that he was so in love with her that he had fallen in love with her, head over wheels. He spoke of how sad he was to have to let his truck go now, that he bought a newer, younger girl, for his truck was a faithful companion, but getting on in years. She had 315,000 miles on her and had been with him for a decade. If he sold her, he couldn't get much money for her because of all her mileage. But the person who bought her would be getting a great little woman because she was still in very good shape and in a position to serve. True, not all of her anatomy was still intact, but anything anyone needed was still there. And she could still do everything important she needed to do, and do it as well as any girl half her age. This man had had sex with his wife a few times in the beginning of their marriage. After they produced a child, he started thinking that sex was evil. So to get away from his wife's sexual advances, he built her a separate house attached to the main dwelling so that they could live together yet apart and go their separate ways, she to France to have a series of affairs, and he to his job, driving his beloved truck by day and even sleeping in her at night. On those rare occasions, when his wife still approached him for sex, he would tell her in essence, "We did it already. We had a kid. Why do we have to do it again?" He would then make the following excuses as he went off to sleep by himself. "I can't sleep with you in the same bed. You snore and toss and turn. You don't keep yourself up. You are too old. I am too old. It's the same thing over and over again. The kid will overhear us. Every time I do, I get irritated down there." In passing, he also noted that not only his sexuality, but also all his biological functions were slow. So slow indeed that he only had a bowel movement once a week. Then he added that anyway, for companionship, he was content with his 20 cats, each of which had a special personality, which he would then go on to describe in detail as if he were talking about 20 parts of a wife, split among 20 different souls. This one purred when he stroked her. That one slept with him. This one kissed him good night. That one woke him up in the morning. This one gave him the feeling that he was wanted, and so on. Both he and his wife agreed to keep their one son at home as much and as long as possible. They even homeschooled him as part of their plan to groom him to be an interpersonally avoidant as his father was sexually avoidant. A day trader in the market, working from his home computer, able to support himself adequately without ever having to leave the house and daddy. My patient loved his life, and he loved his wife, but he never missed nor complained about not having sex with her, nor did he have relations with other women. He was not homosexual either. As he put it, I am simply content to go about my business from the waist up, without having to attend to each and every one of my body parts from the waist down. He never sought nor felt he needed treatment. Originally, he had come to see me because his wife had asked him to go for a consultation just to see if something is wrong, and if so, what could be done about it. But uninterested in continuing therapy beyond our initial meeting, he made another appointment, then cancelled it and never returned. His wife dealt with her own strong sexual needs by having a series of affairs. Though he knew about them, he didn't really seem to mind. He did not deny that she was being unfaithful to him. What bothered him most was the possibility that she would meet someone new and leave him, then not be around to help him bring up their son and take care of the cats. He even agreed to pay for her trips to France, though he knew that she went there to actually meet and have sex with men she had initially contacted through the internet. He figured that a man should pay his wife's transportation, and since she didn't have her own car, it is only fair that I pay for a plane trip to France now and then. He would do anything for her, but one, as the price of her staying with him. Her reassurances that she sought only affairs, not divorce, were enough to keep him calm and happy. This man claimed that he no longer felt any sexual feelings. He denied that he was suppressing them out of a sense of guilt, originating in psychological conflict, social teachings, or religious tenets. His asexuality only bothered him when someone he perceived to be knowledgeable and in authority told him that something was wrong and that he was missing something. Or when he started worrying that his wife would leave him for sex and that he would grow old and alone. For him, asexuality was not pathology, but philosophy. And because his wife accepted him as he was, the pairing worked, the marriage lasted, and both he and his wife claimed to be happy and well-adjusted just the way things were. Acquired sexual avoidance. While true asexuality is innate or essential, acquired sexual avoidance, what Fanisal calls psychogenic sexual impotence, is the product of inhibition arising out of conflict. This psychogenic sexual impotence is often the product of an erotophobia or love phobia. This becomes manifest in various ways, including guilty hesitancy about doing anything at all sexual, resulting in transient or prolonged fearful celibacy, limiting oneself to substitute gratifications such as hobbies used to partially or fully divert oneself from getting sexually involved, sexual coldness and frostiness a paradoxical counterphobic hypersexuality, or physical sexual symptoms such as diminished genital sensation, erectile dysfunction, impotence, inability to get or maintain an erection, premature or retarded ejaculation in the man, and dyspareunia or vaginismus in the woman. Erotophobia is itself the product of a constellation of underlying fearful components. Some erotophobes fear touching and being touched because they view anything sexual as dirty and disgusting, as did the patient who feared shaking my hand because of the possibility that I would contaminate him with a sexually transmitted disease. Others fear that their sexual feelings will flood them so that for them it becomes as difficult to tolerate sexual or any form of intense pleasure. Still others, obsessively scrupulous individuals, fear that sex is forbidden because it is immoral and therefore to be avoided, without simultaneously putting some form of countervailing cleansing prohibition into place. In one such cleansing prohibition, the individual can only enjoy intercourse with a lover, but not with a husband or wife. For now, as Freud noted in his 1912 paper, the most prevalent form of degradation in erotic life, the condition of necessary prohibition is restored by the secret intrigue of being untrue. Another cleansing prohibition involves having sex, then taking it back, by condemning what one just did immediately afterward, say with post-coital revulsion, manifest as a desire to get away from one's partner quickly, what one avoidant called my take a shower and get dressed right now syndrome. Still another involves keeping tenderness out of sexuality, to the point that, as Freud states, a man might actually perceive a check within him, so that, as Jones suggests, he is only capable of intense physical pleasure with a woman socially, morally, or aesthetically of a lower order. Frequently, the condition of prohibition is restored by developing strong attractions to many, and often only to unavailable people, as does the straight man who pursues serial affairs with prostitutes, or the gay man who only likes stevedore types, or by demeaning one's partners or sexuality itself by picking someone already devalued, say, rough trade, or by picking someone valued, then demeaning him or her by refuting the value of sexual exclusivity by becoming openly or secretly promiscuous. A case example: recently, I received the following letter, likely edited, asking for my advice. About 6 months ago, I had a breakup. I was really hurt, and I decided that I was tired of being the monogamous, romantic one who was the only one that seemed to really care and the only one that ever seemed to get hurt. I have since been a slut, in all honesty, going from guy to guy, not even caring to learn the person's name. I honestly have guys in my phone that are labeled a guy or guy 1, guy 2, etc. But I am getting tired of not having a someone, not being loved by a unique partner. Still, I feel that all gay guys are stuck up, selfish whores that can't give a damn about anyone but themselves. I'm in the military, Navy to be exact, and we aren't exactly allowed to be gay, but everyone knows I am. I met a guy on post about 2 weeks ago that I slept with and eventually became fond of. I don't know why really. I've only been with one guy since I met him. I actually care about him. Nowhere near love, but I do care about him. I cry when he's sad, a smile when he's happy, a crush if you would. Still, I posted an ad the other day on Craigslist looking for sex. I got about 40 responses, 30 of which I accepted and agreed to hook up with within the week. Well, the next day I started thinking. I emailed all the guys and told them I was no longer looking for sex. I feel like my life is so fake right now. I would use the commonplace term empty, but I don't like that word. I don't exactly feel empty, rather full of superficial things that are not really me. Henceforth, I will say I feel fake, just compiled of things I don't really want but pretend I do. So I cancelled all these offers. And after about 4 to 5 lonely hours of feeling sorry for myself because I found out that the guy that I like is married and is trying to avoid getting close to me emotionally, I decided to get up and feel good about myself, even with the nothing I have and the nothing I've done lately. I often have low self-esteem. I feel inferior or inadequate. I'm definitely too femme or emotional. I've never had a decent relationship that wasn't online, sadly enough. And I know I have so many great qualities, and so many people would be lucky to have me. But why am I attracted to people I cannot have? And why do I attract people that I would not get with? Hopes and dreams are big to me. I am definitely a lover boy and I like to be proper. Exquisite dates, the whole charade. But I often feel like I am being lied to and used by the only guys I meet. I often feel like guys tell me they like me, but in the same breath try to push me off. Oh, sorry, I'm busy. Can we do it tomorrow? Then I let my emotions take over and I give them about 8 pieces of my mind. If you have any advice, motivational words, or words of wisdom, such would be highly appreciated because I could use all the advice I can get. Perhaps the commonest cleansing prohibition involves having only virtual sex, displaying an excessive fondness for pornography, which becomes acceptable because it doesn't involve actual people. Surprisingly, erotophobic individuals are not necessarily personally cold-blooded types. Outside of the sexual arena, they tend to be normally related people who, though their capacity for sex is diminished, often retain their capacity for personal warmth and affection. Surprising, too, is that unlike individuals suffering from innate sexual avoidance who claim that that's just the way I am, patients with acquired sexual avoidance tend to be insightful about why they are sexually removed. In contrast to the asexual avoidant who says, who knows and even cares why I don't feel anything, they often know that they desire sex and have performance difficulties because they have buried their passions. And it is this that leaves them with reduced sexual feelings and ones that they are unable to translate into decisive erotic action. Development. More is understood about the development of acquired than of innate sexual avoidance, the latter seeming to come from out of the blue. Acquired sexual avoidance in the adult often results when a child's healthy sexual development is thwarted by unhealthy containment at the hands of rigidly suppressive parents who encourage the child to carry on his or her parental sexually suppressive tradition, one supported by repressive elements in the society the parents happen to and often choose to live in. To illustrate, when he was a child, one avoidance mother whipped him whenever she sensed he felt sexual. She meted out one particularly intense whipping when she caught him playing doctor with a neighbor's little girl, saying, "Nice little boys don't play such naughty games." After the beating, he ran away from home to a neighbor's apartment, only to be beaten again, this time for disappearing without telling his mother where he was going. After that, his mother tried to make certain that he stayed away from all the girls in the neighborhood so that he didn't ruin their lives the way he ruined hers. Many parents like this mother are themselves erotophobes who make it clear that they harbor negative feelings about most or all sexuality. They do this either directly, say by criticizing the child for masturbation, or indirectly, say by issuing warnings to not get married and leave home because your mother needs you. Children who internalize the parental erotophobia implode sexually and come to view their own sexuality through the eyes of a rigid, punitive conscience composed of the adopted harsh, shrill, intrapsychic, hateful, self-destructive messages antithetical to desire, love, and sex, with no forgiving nuances anywhere to be found to soften the inner blows of the conscience rains down on the sexual self. Sons whose parents humiliated them for normative sexual feelings often go on to develop a fear of masculine sexual activity. Some case examples. A father beat his son and threatened to cut off his funds for school if he did not see a psychiatrist to be cured of being promiscuous, which according to the father consisted of his having more than one girlfriend at a time. The father's overall message: "I am ashamed of you for being so sexually preoccupied," soon became the son's "I am ashamed of myself and my sexuality." Next, the son developed a defensive retreat, first into sexual passivity and then into studied femininity. As a child, a boy preferred playing with girls. His father, becoming concerned that he would grow up to be a sissy, abused him personally by calling him a faggot in order to frighten him straight. Later in life, the son demeaned himself, both for his sexuality and for enjoying almost anything he did, sexual or not. Eventually, the son attempted suicide because "I hate myself so and deserve to die." Daughters who grow up with an overly possessive, excessively controlling father may become women with dyspareunia. A case example. A woman's father repeatedly made the point that he did not want any teenage daughter of his talking to those creeps on the internet. Then he forbade her to go online at all. And then he declared that she should not date men until she was 30 years old. Then he stopped her from having overnights at houses where there were any men in the household because who knows what you might do in the way of diddling each other should I leave you alone with them. Both parents punished her for premarital petting by selling her their house, knowing but not telling her in advance that a building project across the way was going to block the ocean view. To rub salt in her wounds, they built a new and better house and gave it to her brother. They also gave him a thriving business they had built up over the years. Almost predictably, their daughter morphed into a self-destructive, self-hating, remote woman, distanced not only from her own family, but also from all potential and actual friends and lovers. She felt too undeserving to enjoy the company of good people, and too personally worthless to allow herself to have a great life, especially one that included fulfilling sexual experiences within the context of a happy marriage and big family. Not surprisingly, early discrete sexual traumata tend to have great lingering inhibitory effects on adult sexuality. In a common scenario, childhood rape or incest experiences lead women to view all men as predators, then to detach themselves from adult sexuality because they have come to view all sex, even when consensual, as being forced upon them. This said, a degree of erotophobia is so common as to be virtually normal. While some is personal due to having introjected negative parental and social messages, some is also innate, part of sexuality's inherent tendency to elicit guilt in everyone, straight or gay. For reasons not entirely known or explainable, guilt is a universal negative attitudinal mindset toward having a body and using it sexually, one that makes all sex into something wicked and sinful unless the sex is between a man and a woman, in the missionary position, in the dark, and strictly for the purpose of procreating, and sometimes even then. Psychodynamics. In contrast to asexuality, which is endogenous, primary, or innate, involving not the presence of conflict but the absence of discernible desire, and so no determinable conflict, a sexual avoidance sexual feelings are there, but suppressed, generally at the behest of a guilty conscience full of shame and embarrassment over having a body and wanting to use it. A belief that sex is sinful develops out of irrational self-criticism for one's sexual feelings, where rational self-congratulations for being only and fully human are in fact indicated. Typically, this guilty conscience is associated with a need for retaliatory masochistic self-torture, which is often additionally externalized to become the sadistic torturing of others, also for their sexuality. Thus, a man who hates his own sexuality develops a Madonna complex, where he puts women on a pedestal while making them feel guilty for being whores, as he makes clear. You are a woman, and women don't want sex, or like my mother, may want it but shouldn't have, and have not actually had it. Women put in this nonsensical position often themselves embrace sexual avoidance, hoping that the man will stop debasing and instead start respecting and idealizing them. A case example. An avoidant man with a Madonna complex felt uncomfortable when he saw his wife's head turning to look at a display as they passed a pornography shop. He didn't mind it if he did the looking because he felt that it's okay to do if you are a man. But he hated to see his wife devaluing herself and all women by getting down into what he considered to be the mud and muck of sexuality. He also determined which movies they were allowed to watch at home and in the theater because he worried that his wife would laugh at the double entendres and dirty jokes, revealing that she was just a slut. Ultimately, they couldn't even attend social events because the man and woman there would always talk about sex, and he wanted his wife to neither see nor hear such evil. Central to his guilt-laden relationship with sexuality was the belief that sex was lowly, dirty, and disgusting, a belief that partly originated in his almost daily appalling rediscovery that the genitals were too close for comfort to the excretory organs so that touching his wife sexually could lead to his being contaminated by her and getting an infection. Of course, also contributing to sexual avoidance are the interpersonal fearful mindsets characteristic of avoidance in general, especially as shown in Table 4.1. Table 4.1, Fearful Mindsets. Fear of exposure, fear of intimacy as confinement, fear of yielding with yielding, dissolution of the self and ego, fear of dependency and with it, helpless passivity, paradoxically associated with a fear of independence and that with isolative remoteness, fear of becoming too emotional and being flooded by overly strong feelings associated with a fear of letting loose, as if the slightest stirring of emotion might cause all emotions to spin out of control and overwhelm the individual, leaving him or her no longer in charge of the self. Fear that a demarcating moral line might be crossed. Fear of failing and being humiliated, often based on a negatively distorted body image that leads avoidance to sell themselves short, expect little, then withdraw defensively to avoid being humiliated, and in case of misplaced altruism, to keep from disappointing others. Fear of succeeding, then being defeated, in men castrated or in women emancipated. Fear of rejection that in turn originates in sensitivity to and readiness to experience even the most positive feedback as shatteringly negative, based in part on excessively high and often perfectionist expectations of the self and others. Fear of pleasure on the part of ascetic masochistic individuals who so eschew having fun in any form that they make certain not to take any pleasure and enjoy themselves at all, or at least do so as little as possible. Fear is that self-assertion, aggressivity, making sex equals rape. Fear of admitting one's own problems so that others are to be avoided unless they agree to change and be the ones to make all the sacrifices. Specific sexual symptoms. Pathognomonic, characteristic pathological psychodynamics can sometimes be linked to specific sexual symptoms. Broadly speaking, sexual symptoms tend to be mostly associated with the following: an inability to merge intimate and sexual feelings due to an overly scrupulous morality and fear of closeness, a histrionic fear of genital vulnerability and mutilation, a generalized regressive mindset that promotes a throwback to infantilism and with it immature and so infantile sexuality. More specifically, using men as examples, many men with premature ejaculation tend to be excessively impulsive and show a narcissistic lack of concern for a partner's fulfillment along the lines of, I come when I'm ready to, and who cares about you? Such men are often also easily bored and want to get it over with so that they can go on to have sex with someone new and presumably more enticing. Some men with erectile dysfunction may fear that penetrating equates to hurting because the penis equates to a weapon, so they spare the woman in order to avoid brutalizing her. Some are paranoid individuals who see in any mutual attraction the possibility that a woman is forcing them to perform. Still, others are sadists who, devaluing women emotionally and physically, come to feel that no woman deserves anything much from them, so why give them what they want? Men with ejaculatio tarda are often insecure individuals who are spectatoring, observing themselves having sex, and making each performance a test of their adequacy, while predictably disparaging themselves for not measuring up, brooding right throughout their performance about what might go wrong. For example, they won't be able to come to orgasm, as they constantly judge their sexual prowess as if they are on public display and about to embarrass themselves through failure. Ejaculatio tarda can also arise in the context of an intense fear of closeness due to the belief that closeness equates to merging, or in the context of the histrionic fear that being tender necessarily means being feminine, and as such becoming emasculated. Further problematic, and perhaps most common of all, is a negative mindset that won't allow the man to deny the seamier aspects of sex, leading to frustrated excitement due to the intrusion of negative fantasies originating in disgust.